Chag Sameach. My name is Andrew Hershkowitz with Ahava Echad. You're about to watch our very first Zoom learning session recorded on May 26th, Gimmel Sivan, 3 days before the holiday of Shavuot. Just like the live audience did, please feel free to send in your questions, concerns, comments, criticisms. But overall, we hope you take a positive message away from both the content as well as our goal. With that being said, let's jump right into it.
The biggest issue that I hear from people is that they feel that they are being taught out of fear of failure, that if they fail, then they're a bad person and that their parents wasted tens of thousands of dollars, as opposed to being taught this material, the most important material in the history of civilization. Like, we're talking about the creator, right? This is the one question nobody has the answer to. Like, if someone comes up to you on the street and says, I have the answer with God and everything, they're going to think you're crazy. You're just a crazy guy in the street. Because conceivably in this post-truth world, no one has the answer. We're trying to say that together, not just me, not just Jacob, not any one person, but together as one, that we can unite and provide an education through the Torah the way it was done thousands of years ago in the time of the sages, that to develop a curriculum that is engaging and beautiful and be taught out of love and out of a want to learn. There's this idea that people don't have attention spans anymore. I used to believe that up until Yoram Nachamaski over in the other room said, it's not the kids don't have attention spans. Kids can sit on a video game and play for 8 hours straight. You know, it's about finding something that they want to do. You know, and the last thing people want to do is be forced into something, especially kids. I'm not a father yet. God willing, will be one day, but it seems kids have an innate instinct on who the authority is and how to rebel against it. So with that being said, I want to introduce Jacob. He's probably already like, don't say such nice things about me. He's like the most humble person I know, which is probably why he just made me the host. It says, I just got a thing that says, you are the host now. So he's already trying to shirk responsibility. But truthfully, like, without Jacob really dedicating himself over the past 5 to 8 years, none of this would be possible. So, I'm going to stop talking now because I feel like you guys have heard my voice on paper and in your ears enough. So let's get started on learning the Aleph Bet the way it was done during the time of the sages, especially during Shavuot week, where unfortunately we're not going to be able to do this on Yom Tov like we do every other year because of what's going on. But take it away, Jake.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. Obviously, thanks to my parents as well. You know, you give that shout out. It's not me. Thank God that my parents could do all these kinds of things. Okay, so welcome to this project, this organization called Ahava and Echad, or Pel Pe Panim El Panim, from mouth to mouth, from the mouth of God to the mouth of Moshe, and Panim El Panim, face to face. And that's what this logo symbolizes. The whole experience is basically just seeing the actual Torah face to face as it was given. And summed up beautifully by the quote by the Rogachover Gaon, that when you pray, you're essentially speaking to God, but when you're learning Torah, God is speaking to you, or speaking to us. And so, being that Shavuot is coming up, it's good to just look at the actual source that you could find on page 17 in the source booklet. And just a quick introduction, that this pasuk is from the cryptic Shir HaShirim, and the sages walk us through and explain these cryptic words. But basically, when God brings us closer to Har Sinai, when God brings us close to the mountain, and in the beginning of receiving the Torah, the first step to that it says Nagila, that God revealed the Torahs from the storehouses of the heavens, v'nismecha bach, and we will be happy, and v'nivdach, and then we will be like literally cleansed from the inside. Bach is numerically bet and kaf, which is 22, with the 22 symbols that the whole Torah is given in. So the first part of really receiving the Torah is receiving the keys to the Torah, because the whole Torah is scribed in those symbols.
Right. So just like a painter needs colors or a builder needs tools, the Torah itself can't be comprised without the otiyot, just like any story can't be comprised without the letters. So God needed to create the letters first, the symbols first, in order to then create the Torah.
The booklet begins on page 57 in the sources that I have here displayed. And so these are essentially, the kaf numerically is 20, bet numerically is 2. These are the 22 keys to the whole Torah, because these are the symbols that the Torah is scribed in. And it's taken straight from this page in the Talmud of the method of how the little kids used to go through the Aleph Bet. And this is the same exact way that famously Rabbi Akiva sat with the little kids and began to learn the Aleph Bet at the age of 40 years old. Okay, and so there is obviously no one better to introduce the Aleph Bet than Rabbi Akiva himself. And the Midrash on the Aleph Bet, the teachings of the Aleph Bet, is called Otiyot de Rabbi Akiva. He became such a master, it's called like the letters or the signs of Rabbi Akiva, as if these are Rabbi Akiva symbols. Obviously, these are God's symbols. And so Rabbi Akiva says, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Elu, these, and it's pointing at several things. And Rabbi Akiva is pointing to the Aleph Bet. And here the Aleph Bet are displayed as a number chart. So beginning at the top right, Aleph and Bet, and it continues. This is the ones row, this is the tens row, and this is the hundreds row. So it's important just because the Aleph Bet are not only pictures and sounds, that they are also numbers, and each one teaches many different things in the shape of them all. And so we'll just begin how the little kids begin and how Rabbi Akiva begins. And before we just dive into the first two symbols, a quick run through of the just essential differences between biblical Hebrew as opposed to all the other languages that exist on earth. Beginning at the top, it says that the Aleph Bet are the building blocks of creation. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan quotes Rabbi Akiva and quotes Avraham Avinu, that basically was a master of the Aleph Bet, and teaches that the Aleph Bet are called avanim, stones, that you take these stones and you put them together and you build a house, which is a word, because the word then houses the meaning. So that's just one aspect, and like how God creates through speech. And the beginning that the sages explained, Bereshit bara Elokim et, that in the beginning God created et, which is from Aleph till Tav. And initially, the first step to creation is essentially to create the building blocks from which then God creates everything and speaks everything into existence. And so another thing is that you read from right to left that the Torah begins with a big symbol bet, which is essentially like a bracket, so that if you were imagining this cursor walking along and you just hit the wall and you can't go that way, the only way is out. So it moves from right to left, which is a complete mental shift for English speakers and other languages as well. The Aleph Bet are also called pictures, tmunot, which are in the language of the sages, that there's another midrash on the Aleph Bet called Sefer HaTmunah, the book of the picture, or the picture book. And basically, this means that literally referring to the Aleph Bet as pictures, Tmunah Rishonah Ha'ot Aleph, as Rabbi Zamir Kohenshita brings the sources of this book. So in the language of Avraham, they're called stones, the building blocks of creation. In the language of the sages, the Aleph Bet are also called literally pictures, that each picture symbol depicts many different things.
So, unlike other languages, I mean, I don't want to say all, because I don't know a lot about Chinese or stuff like that, but the physical properties of the otiyot themselves are extremely important, which is why even the Hebrew that we learn, when we look at the Siddur, what we're looking at is already watered down, because we're not looking at the otiyot as seen on a real Torah scroll. Like most men don't see Torah scrolls very often, and unfortunately, depending on your perspective, women don't see it either. And that's pretty much a shame, because that's the closest replica of what we have to God's word on earth, is the Aleph Bet in Ktav Ashri as seen on a real Torah scroll. And yet when we are reading Sidurim, and let alone other religions call the Old Testament in English, so much is lost in translation, even the physical properties, which when we get into each individual ot, we will see how important each individual physical property of the otiyot are.
Another unique feature that's lost in translation is that the Aleph Bet also move. The kids are going to explain that there are certain symbols that could be open, like the mem. There's an open mem, and there's the mem that's closed. There's the nun that's bent over. There's the nun that's straightened up. And the kids are going to discuss basically 5 of the symbols move depending on if they're the final symbol of a word. So that's another unique thing that you don't really have that in other languages. Another important thing is that hakol zahar o nekeva, everything is either masculine or feminine. And from the second verse of the entire Torah, v'ha'aretz haita, and the earth she was, teaching the earth is a feminine thing. Like that's why all these feminine concepts and concept of like Mother Earth and all these kinds of things. These are something that you don't get in English because it would just be translated and the earth was void, and English neutered the whole language, that you don't have distinction between male and female. The other huge principle is that there's no synonyms in biblical Hebrew. Rabbi Zamir Cohen Shlita, the fact that you're looking at two different words means that they each have their own unique meaning. And the same kind of way the sages say, just like every person's face is different, so too are all their thoughts and everything about them. So the same exact way, the fact that we're seeing two different words means that they each are unique and they must be understood. And that's why it's much more significant how specifically the Torah is speaking, choosing its words like that.
Right. Everything has intention, right? There, you come to a point where you realize there are no coincidences. And especially when you're dealing with Lashon HaKodesh and the Torah, because every word is there for a reason, and the way we learn is as a kenegdo, right? Why not this word, right? Why are we using this word, not another word? There must be a reason for it, and that's what the Targum is, and we'll get into that eventually, but in a different time. But that's not the same in other languages. It's really just more for style. Like if you want to sound intellectual, you'll use bigger words, or if you want to be more simple, you'll use other words. But that's really usually the purpose. That's not the way it works in Lashon HaKodesh.
As we touched upon, every single symbol is also a number, but Gematria is only one of the 32 paths of extracting information from the Torah. So it's not that like Gematria is the only thing that we have to be able to extract information, which is an important point.
Yeah. So it's important that we understand that it's only one of 32 ways to learn the Torah, because when people hear Gematria, they immediately impose this idea onto you, or at least this is my experience, that this is what you do all the time. That because this number matches up with this number, you can find out whatever you want. But like, it's only one of 32 ways, and there are so many instances where things line up that, to go with the larger thesis, as I wrote in the paper, there's no way that this could be written by a human, let alone a monkey with a typewriter.
Absolutely. Another unique feature is that the otiot murkavot mi otiot acharot, the symbols of the Aleph Bet themselves, are made up of other symbols. So we'll get more into that. We'll see by the symbol Aleph. Yeah.
Right. I was going to say we can get right into Aleph unless there's more. I mean, I know there's a lot of distinctions, but
only two more things here. It's that the definition of a symbol is in the symbol itself, and thereby the definition of a word is in the word itself. So essentially, once we understand what each symbol depicts on a basic level, how the kids started, how Rabbi Akiva started at 40, then we could be able to break down words, let's say, that we don't even know, by saying, what do I know about each of these symbols, and then why is it together and in this order, and all these kinds of things.
Right. I can personally attest to that. Like, look, I mean, those of you who know me know that, especially ones that went to high school with me, I did not pay attention in Jewish studies. And like, if I can, after learning the basic lesson of the Aleph Bet, if I can learn things and say things to Jacob, who has been studying things for a long time, and say things that he's never heard before, that means anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. And I'm not smarter than anybody else. Anybody can do it. And that's an amazing, amazing thing. So we're almost at the universality of it. The fact that everyone's perspective is different on the same objective truth.
Everyone's going to see things no one else can. It's understood too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's an amazing thing. It has the power of the individual with the power of the collective at the same time. And when we get to the Aleph, we'll see how that depicts that concept as well.
Yeah. Also, interestingly, that the bracha that's made when there's 600,000 people in Am Yisrael together is Baruch Atah Hashem Chacham Harazin, the knower and revealer of all reasons and secrets, that basically the collective together would have all the answers, all the Torah would be preserved through all the unique perspectives and things like that along those lines. Also, okay, yeah.
I was just going to say that it's also interesting that not one person is more important than the other. Every piece of information that we can get from anyone is crucial.
Exactly. And essentially that when you give over the Aleph Bet, the people essentially are starting on a higher level, because let's say it took years to find these kinds of things, and now you're just delivering it you're saving people time essentially without having to go through and find all these different sources and fumble around, and no one's really saying it also. So that's, yeah.
So this idea that no one is better than anybody else. Everyone has the value of one, and together we are all one. So are we at the Aleph right now?
Yeah.
All right, so let's do it.
So the way that this whole section is introduced is that the sages relate over to a certain sage, and obviously the names of sages is very significant when a certain teaching is being given over. But for right now, just simple purposes, they said to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, and they told him that these children just arrived to the Beit Midrash and were saying such words that haven't even been heard of since the time of Yehoshua ben Nun, son of Nun. And here in the Talmud, the Nun has quotes as if saying like the son of the symbol Nun. And we'll hopefully see that by the symbol Nun, but the Nun essentially, as the kids teach, is a Ne'eman, a trustworthy servant. The Nun depicts sort of someone with utmost humility, like a person on his knees essentially before the king. So Yehoshua, who was the student of Moshe for many years, and his squire, his helper, so basically a person who learns from someone for many, many years, there is a sort of relationship that they could be seen as their father as well. So maybe that's what it's saying, that Yehoshua, son of Nun, the symbol Nun, who's humble. Yeah.
Right, and this is crazy because me, Jacob, and Isaac, we learn these things all the time, and I'm just seeing this for the first time. I never even picked up on that. The fact that like Yehoshua ben Nun, he's Moshe's apprentice. Nun is Anav, which represents Moshe, and the Nun itself. If you look at the Aleph Bet chart, Jacob, if you could pull it up, we'll go back to Aleph in a second. But just since you gave up to Nun, the Nun comes right after Otiyot, Chaf, Lamed, and Mem, right? So the Nun is bowing down to the king. That's Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva came up with that the Nun itself is on its knees bowing down towards the Melech. So that's just a crazy thing. Again, no monkey created that.
So basically the beginning lesson, the kids begin by going through the first two symbols. They say Aleph Bet, and the kids say Aleph Bina. Aleph, as Rabbi Zamir Kohanshita explains, is the highest level of learning, and that is essentially face-to-face, and that's seen in the symbol Aleph itself, that the Aleph is also made up of two, other symbols, as we said, and so the sages transmit, that's a Tanaic source, that the Aleph is actually confirmed that it's a Yud above, a Yud below, and this slanting Vav that's in the middle. And essentially adding that together is 26, which is pointing to God's name written with a Yud and then a Hey and then a Vav and then a Hey, essentially that Hashem literally is Echad.
And their numeric value.
So there was a lot there. Let's move back to this idea of learning face to face. As someone that worked in media, it was my job to essentially look at the competition, what's going on, what are people resonating with, and podcasts are something that people resonate with immensely. And what is a podcast? What's Joe Rogan's podcast? It's one person sitting across from another person, right? Speaking with each other across from the table. Might not always be agreeing, but they're in the pursuit of one goal, right? They're connected. They're in the pursuit of one goal. They're connected with the Vav. They're two Yuds connected with the Vav. They're in the pursuit of the same goal, which is trying to understand what is happening here, whatever the conversation is.
Right. Essentially, the Yud in the most simplistic way is like the head of a person. And so the two Yuds would be seen as like the two heads of people. And if you were to build a school or whatever, a table, like those high school chairs with the desk attached to the chair. So instead, to build it in the shape of the Aleph, like it's the two chairs coming out and the table in between. And literally you're sitting face to face and learning. And this is the highest level of learning. And there's different levels to learning face to face. One of them, if we're looking at the Aleph as it's a Yud that is above and a Yud that is below, then it could be seen as a master teacher to a brilliant student, as that's one aspect of face-to-face, to learn from a master teacher. The other thing, or just simply viewing the two Yuds as equals, is that these are like two friends, and the sages have an adage that two friends who learn together are like two dull knives, that when they strike each other, they sharpen each other, as I heard from Rav David Shlita in Masechet Tanit in the Talmud. And Another thing that the sages stress the importance of friendship. They have a saying, "O chavruta o metuta," either a good friend in this world or death. That's how important it is to have a good friend in the world. And even if you have to pay for their travel, the sages teach like that is the level of the importance of learning together with a friend. And there's many levels to that. But yeah.
Jay wants to let more people in because they're waiting. We're going to
Yeah.
fix that for next time. I think it's important to stress this idea of that they're on opposite sides, right? The Yuds are on opposite sides and they come together to form one, right? It's the very much idea of the yin and the yang, right? It's what the idea of the swastika was before Hitler and Yamach Shemal corrupted it, right? And it's kind of interesting in that way that he chose that symbol specifically, right? Because people think of it as the complete opposite of what it actually is, which is the Aleph itself, right? This idea of Ezer Kenegdo, that you can understand black by looking at white, right? So the Aleph in and of itself is such it's prevalent in our society, and we don't even realize it on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And they just teach also the significance of learning together with a friend is that if you're going through information and there's a mistake or the mic's off, somebody could catch you and help you, and help you with that. The other thing is that specifically for the Torah Sheba'al Peh, which even though was committed to writing, that initially it was not, even though it's committed to writing, you still need somebody to sort of read it and activate it. And you have to hear it from someone else. So two friends could help one another by reading the actual text to each other, as the Gra says, that, basically, because that would be then properly receiving Torah Sheba'al Peh. And also for someone who their mother tongue is not biblical Hebrew or Aramaic, sometimes we spend half the time just trying to get over the language barrier. But here, if somebody's reading, you can now focus all your efforts on simply hearing the message and like that to switch. And to catch a mistake. And also if somebody says something and let's say they say something that's even wrong, but that leads you to the correct answer, they have a part in that correct answer. And that's something that, again, you wouldn't have if just learning alone.
So Jacob mentioned one thing before that I would say was the one piece of information that made my mind click into this, how important this whole thing is. And that was this idea that the Aleph is two Yuds and a Vav, which is God's name. Is it coming up? It's probably like flipped, right? It's in the mirror screen, but it looks like it's coming up. Right. So God's name is again 26 Yud K and Vav K, but the most powerful thing is that theologians, people that aren't even religious, but study about what would a God be, what would an all-infinite, all-knowing God be, all say that a God would have to exist outside of time, that God cannot be confined by time. The world has a beginning, but God doesn't have a beginning. God is infinite, right? So the thing about God's name that is so crazy is that you literally see the words Haya. No, sorry, it starts with Yehiyeh first because Yud is first. So the future and Yehiyeh, Hoveh, present, and Haya, the past, all in God's name at once, at the same time, which... That's what those three colors are demonstrating. The word in blue is Yehiyeh, the word in red is Hoveh, the word Haya, right, is in the back. Right, so that is literally, like, that blew my mind when I saw that. And again, I keep stressing this idea that no one can come up with that, like it's 1,000% true, so that just is.
It's basically outside of all known dimensions. And you would have to consider time to be just a dimension. It's another dimension of which we can measure. It's, again, you can just call it the fourth dimension, instead of just three-dimensional. And we have to be outside of that if we can even picture.
And at the same time, God is Aleph. We're talking about Aleph, right? Meaning God is one. God is one. It's all of it. God encompasses all creation, right? It's all one. Just as if we can get on the same page, we all individually have godly powers. If we all use those powers for good in the pursuit of the same goal, we can do amazing, amazing things and bring love and happiness to the world, as opposed to depression and destruction that has been unfortunately prevalent over the past couple thousand years.
Right. So they have the Aleph again, one in every way, from teacher to student, friend to friend, also seen as husband and wife, that when they unite together, they create life. And the truth is that when we say that God is one, that is the true definition of oneness, that the Pasuk in the Torah says that a man should leave his home and find his wife, and they should cleave to her, and they will become one flesh. So how is it two things that become one when they're each a part or half? And when they unite, they make the complete thing. So that's when we say Hashem Echad. Echad, oneness, is the perfect unity that is male and female that unite and create life. And so, again, seen in the Aleph, the two.
God is the ultimate mother and father, not just the father that is always stressed. If anything, in the paper, I specifically put mother first and not father, because the mother is the creator of life. At the end of the day, they do the biggest burden, they carry the biggest burden. And so, yeah, this idea of, like, because I don't even want to get into this conversation of this idea of like biological sex and gender, but it's a conversation that is like railing throughout our entire culture right now, and there's so much confusion. The one thing we do know for sure is that male and female creates life.
Right, and basically, the final step is simply face to face with God's Torah as it was given in the script of the Torah and Ktav Ashurit, in a most perfected script, not obviously any scribes practicing or sloppily written, but it has to be written perfectly. And we've spent the time to make sure that this font has all of those amazing teachings. So just to recap really quick, that the kids say Aleph is Alef, which is the highest level of learning, face to face. And that is different than the word lemod that Rashi sort of brings what it's not saying. Rashi wrote for Aleph Bina, learn together as one understanding. Rashi wrote lemod Torah, learn Torah. So basically, Aleph, if you look in an English translation, it would be learn. And lemod would be also translated as learn. So now we started with the answer first, that Aleph is that highest level. Lemod is learning that you could do by yourself, and it's also seen in the symbol itself that it begins with a lamed, which is essentially a person. Like the yud is the head, the vav is like the head with a body essentially, and sitting on top of a chair. Chaf is kiseh. So the lamed is learning like a student that's sitting by his chair at night learning, and that is the difference between Aleph and lemod. Lemod you could do by yourself. Aleph is only together.
And again, getting back to this idea of podcasting and human interaction, like during this time of, learned that in college in my audio production class. Again, probably didn't pay much attention in that either. The idea, this idea that two people learning together, becoming one, a podcast, content. This is what people resonate with. And in these times, more than ever, humanity has this yearning to connect. Everyone has this void, and we feel it more now than ever. The fact that we weren't able to see anybody. This is why Zoom, like along with like Peloton and all these and these companies are making so much money, because we need this connection, right? Even the word connect to the internet. That's what we feel like we're connecting every day. But honestly, what we're really doing is connecting with people. And that's what the Aleph represents.
So Aleph is already, we're learning the importance of good parents, good teachers, good friends, good relationships. And as we said, even if you're disagreeing, and the sages would specifically learn with people that they disagree with, because that expands the mind, and to give you a perspective that you may not have on different things. And so that's all seen in the Aleph. And the kids say Aleph Bina. Bina is understanding. And as Rabbi Ari Kaplan Zatzal explains, binas is the word bain, which means between. Bet numerically is already two. Bet is the beginning of already division, or bet literally is half the symbol Aleph. If you were to block the bottom yud and tilt your head to the right, essentially it looks like a bet, as Rabbi Ari Kaplan Zatzal brings in the name of the sages. But basically, Binah is the ability to differentiate between seemingly similar things. As we did by Aleph and Lemod, we needed Binah understanding to differentiate what's the difference between these words that are also translated the same. And Rashi wrote by the symbol Bet, Binah, that the word Torah, meaning study together as one the Torah that begins with a big symbol bet, that when you look on an actual scroll, the bet is enlarged. And not only is it enlarged, but the sages transmit in Masechet Sofrim, the tractate of scribes, all the rules in scribing and preparing an authentic Torah scroll, that it also comes with 4 crowns on the top. So that's why the bet is here is enlarged, and it has the 4 crowns. And so the simple meaning is that learn together as one the Torah that begins with a big symbol bet, that teaches a person Binah, understanding how to differentiate between different things. What is good, what is not, what is holy, what is not holy, all these kinds of things. And that's where we, by studying the Torah, will get the answers to the differences between things.
I'm glad that the Aleph and the Bet are together here, because we just learned that Aleph represents God, right? And the Bet is the first ot of the Torah, meaning before creation of the world, with Bereshit, you see the Bet is closed off. It moves from right to left, and it's closed off on the right side. The only thing before creation was God.
So right off the get-go, that is the Aleph Bet starting us off with those important lessons. That is the Binah, that we'll see more of Binah, hopefully by the Atbash section, which is after the whole Aleph Bet, from Aleph till Tav. There's the whole Atbash section, which is essentially once we have the building blocks, now the Aleph Bet and Atbash start to come together and weave together different words and different things. And there we'll see an example of Binah. But Binah is to be able to understand something from another thing, and to be able to extract information from something that you're given, and to understand all the different ways about it, and to understand simply the flip side. If this is what makes a person considered not good, then the opposite would make them good. So like that is an aspect of Binah as well. And so those are the first 2 symbols.
And the first 2 symbols also say Av, right? Which is father, and is also the first 2 otiot of Abraham's name, who is the one that utilized the Aleph Bet to their full potential and essentially taught the world. Him and Sarah, Abraham and Sarah started a school called Eshel, or is it Esel? Eshel. And
Abraham taught the men, and Sarah taught the women.
Right, exactly. And the first 2 otiyot are in his name. So it's pretty crazy. And my dad's name, for what it's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the kids then move on to the symbols Gimmel and Dalet, and they say Gimmel Dalet is Gimmel Dalim. Give to those who lack. So Dal is a poor person, Dalim is plural. Gimmel is give them or help, aid the needy, as Art Scroll translates, help those in need. And so the kids are, because they're seeing the symbols up front, they're going to notice and ask 3 questions, and we'll get the answers. They notice, they say, what is sort of the reason, or a taste into, literally, what is the reason that the Gimel is seemingly extending like this part of the Gimel, the leg, towards the Dalet? And so, and Rashi says, not towards the Bet. So the Gimel is, this part is specifically sort of pointing to the Dalet. What is the reason for that? They say, for this is the way of Gomlei Chasadim, those who do acts of loving kindness, as would be translated, those who pity the poor and want to help. That's the ways of the givers, to run after the poor. So initially, it could look like the Gimel is running with a foot forward, it's putting out a foot forward, but also at the same time that we know Aleph Bet are made up of other Aleph Bet. So one of the things here that it's seen as the Ot Zayin and a Yad, an upside down Yud, which is essentially, Yad is a hand, and literally it's extending like a helping hand. Also Yud numerically is 10. And so literally like presenting to the Dal and trying to help and give the poor person what they need. So that's the ways of the givers to do that.
So another thing that's noticeable there, and this is one of the few things I remember from Yeshiva Flatbush, sorry mom, was that Rambam teaches that the highest form of giving to the poor is when you don't know who you're giving to, and the person doesn't know who's giving it to them. So I was sitting on the train a couple of months ago, and there was a person on a wheelchair that was coming by asking for money, and I had my AirPods in, being a zombie, as those things tend to make you. And I looked up and I saw the wheelchair move past me, and I'm like, I lost my opportunity to give this person money. And then I thought about the Gimmel and the Dalet, and I'm like, I'm completely wrong. I actually have the best opportunity now. So I snuck up behind the person in the wheelchair, and I stuck whatever amount of money it was into the back of their knapsack. And this other woman's looking at me like I'm a crazy person. And it makes sense, obviously, because the person shouldn't be embarrassed, and you shouldn't have this feeling of superiority for doing something that everybody should be doing, which is caring for the poor and helping people. So and expanding, Jacob, if you can bring up the Gimmel again. I don't know if you're letting in people right now, but if you can, is the screen shared right now? Okay. You mentioned how the Gimmel is comprised of a Zion and a Yud, right? A Yud is 10, a Zion is 17. The word Tov, good, is 17, right? So the Gimmel is good. The Gimmel is giving, right? That's what our purpose is here, to give to the people in need.
Right. The kids are gonna just continue. Like, that's what they noticed about the Gimel, about the Dalet. They ask also. They notice and they say, "What's the reason that the part of the Dalet is pointing to the Gimel?" And so Rashi writes either that we have both rules fulfilled here, that it has to be slanting slightly towards the right, or simply the question is, why is the leg on the right side of the Dalet and not on this side? So the kids answer that it's up to the poor person to make himself known to the giver, because if the poor person is hiding away somewhere, the giver could never reach them and can never help them. So the giver wants to help. He's running after the poor, but the poor have to make themselves presentable. The kids say that it's up to the poor person to make themselves known to the giver. And also, this is not only with money, that it could be with wisdom, it could be with anything, that whatever you lack, you want to go to the one who is rich or can help you with that. And that's what the kids teach about the Dalet. So that's now speaking about both of them, but they notice one final thing. They say, what is the reason that the face of the Dalet turns away from the Gimel? And that's what Andrew touched upon just now, is the fact that the kids teach that in order so that to enable the giver to give discreetly, to not cause embarrassment. And that's what Andrew's summing up, that the highest level is that which preserves the dignity of both parties, that the giver has no idea who he's giving to, the receiver has no idea who he's getting from. When they meet in the streets, no one's embarrassed, no one feels haughty, and all the dignity of people is preserved. And Rab Zamir Cohenshita also says that Gimel numerically is 3, and the way that this is usually done is through a third party. Either you give money to a shaliach, a messenger, and they will then go and deliver it to the poor, or simply the third party is putting it in a tzedakah box, and that tzedakah box is then collected and then distributed out that way. And right, and so basically that Gimmel Dalet is this relationship of giving to the poor, and that's the word Haggadah in biblical Hebrew, that it means, as opposed to all the other words for speech, Vaidaber, Vayomer, Vaisaper, all these other words that exist, Haggadah is giving over information that the person would not have or is lacking. They wouldn't get it otherwise. And Gimmel Dalet could be a one-time thing. Sometimes you need to say something once, and then they understand it.
Right. I actually never heard that before either. That's pretty sweet. Another thing that is kind of hard. I mean, I couldn't believe when I first saw this the first time, that Gimmel and Dalet, I mean, Jay, if you get that back up there, it literally spells out God, right? It literally spells out God. And if you think about it even deeper, this connection that we're speaking about giving to people that don't realize it, that's essentially what God gives to us, right? God, we don't see God. God doesn't make, we have to look, we have to find, we have to really seek God out in order to see God.
That's why Rabbi Kaplan says that this world is called Olam, from the root of Alem, which is to conceal, that the universe on one hand conceals God, that God is so hidden, many people don't even think that there is a God, or don't know that, and things like that,
Right. And Aleph, if we're going to recap it just a little bit, because Aleph is God, right? Bet essentially is creation, right? Bereshit. The first question many people ask is, why? Why did God create this world? What's the purpose? That's the purpose. To give to the needy, right? To be godlike, right? To embody the relationship between the Gimmel and the Dalet. That's why we're here.
Right, the basic relationship. God is the ultimate giver, we're the ultimate receiver, and our mission is to be godlike, to not just take, but to be able to be essentially like a woman, give back so much more than anything that was received. Okay, and so
And again, just the concept of also doing it unconditionally and doing it without question, and this is
right.
Right.
But even if
in your nature, you should build your nature
for sure. But even the sages say that even if you do it lo lishma, even if you don't do it for like the pure sake of the thing, a person should still do it, because eventually it will lead them to being able to do it for all of those right reasons.
Right, and but Isaac's point is a good one, and it goes back to this idea that Gimel is comprised of a Yud and a Zayin, which is Tov. That the Gimel is doing it out of the goodness, out of the kindness of its own heart. That's why.
Right, because parents didn't need to have you. Parents wanted to have you. So God didn't need to have us and create us. God wanted to have us. Yeah.
And we're going to see that. And we're going to see that when we get to Oteh. We're going to come back to Gimmel Dalet when we get to Oteh, and about how what you just said about just like God didn't need to give us this world, this beautiful, even though it's a little messed up sometimes, this beautiful world with nature and good people, didn't need to do it. Why did God do it? Because he wanted to give to us. And that's the same reason why parents have children. I can tell you how many times I was called the last tuition by my father. I understood the entire time that it was a joke, because, there's no reason for parents to have kids on a very basic financial level, but it's out of the love, the unconditional love that is there between parents and their kids. The same relationship exists between God and all of he/she's children, because again, the Aleph represents God's creation, right?
Right. English only has the word he where it specifically doesn't belong. Like he is. So although Rabbi Ari Kaplan itself says that it's seen as more of which we have to get into that whole area, but that's essentially where that whole thing stems from. But yeah, we know that oneness, as we said, touches upon. So the kids move on to the symbols Hey and Vav, or Vav is really the Yemenites, they pronounce it wow. So Hey and wow, if you will. But the kids say, Zeh Shmo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the name of the one that is completely unique, set apart, but at the same time, Baruch Hu, the source of everything, is God. This sort of paradox. God, that's discussed in more Kabbalistic areas, but we could understand it basically using the example of how a baby is conceived, that the sages say that God created this space and went inside, created this vacuum essentially, devoid of everything, but it's now the ultimate vessel that can receive. And then God drops this ray of light. So we know from the conception of a child, like the egg and the sperm, that the sperm would be seen like a ray of light dropping into the egg. And that is how all of creation takes place. And so God is on one hand removed, kadosh, and that's seen in the letter symbol kuf itself, that the kids are going to say by the symbol kuf. Kuf is kadosh, meaning depicting the word kadosh, which means separate, elevated, and the kuf is one of the two symbols with two seemingly separate parts, that God is completely separate. But not only that, the angels, which are a level above us, whatever these things mean, they say God is kadosh, 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 meaning from our perspective 4 times removed, 4 times set apart. There's really nothing else like it. You can no kind of imagery. And at the same time, though, Baruch Hu is the source of everything and generates everything, and is immanent right here, that when we pray, we whisper, because God is, although beyond all the heavens, but God is literally hearing our words and even knows our thoughts, of course. And these kinds of concepts, and we'll explain even a deeper level to Hey and Vav. That's initially, yeah.
I think it's important also to stress that none of this is Kabbalah, right? It's not some scary Kabbalah that is going to make you go crazy. This is literally things that were learned by 5-year-olds. all these things. So if anyone has a fear of that this is like extremely like dangerous material, it's not. And Jacob mentioned that the hay, this is one of my favorite one of my favorite things, but the hay is one of two otiyot that are comprised that are separate from each other, right? The kuf and the hay. Jacob mentioned how the hay symbolizes childbirth. If we go back to Gimmel and Dalet, we'll see Gimmel is the three avot, right? On Pesach, Shlosha Miyodea, the three avot, Arba Miyodea, the four imahot, right? So we have so we go back down to the hay, and we see that the hay is comprised of a Dalet and a Yud, right? And not just a Yud, but an upside down Yud. And we're skipping ahead a little bit here, but a Yud symbolizes a baby for many reasons. It's the smallest ot in the Aleph Bet. The word Yerusha, from Yerushalayim, inheritance, right? Yeled, right? The ultimate act of nature on this earth is childbirth. The miracle of childbirth it's an amazing, like, godly thing. And I just want to shout out Mazal Tov to Natan and Natalie for the birth of their baby girl, Abigail. Yeah, so we're gonna stop for a question. Devora Jaffe has a question. Jacob, can you accept people are coming in? The question was, is it truly altruistic when parents want to have kids, or do they gain from it as well? Look, I'm not a parent, so like I can't speak to it, and I can tell you all the crap I've given my parents over the years, so I can't really speak from their perspective, but I would like to think that they gain from it as well, which is why they do it. You know, I mean, because they had a relationship with their parents and they want to give their kids a better life than they had. Not to say that their life was bad, but that's how we keep progressing, is that parents have kids, give themselves a better life, and those kids have their own kids and try to give their kids a better life than they had. And that's how we progress to the point where, God willing, Mashiach comes. And that's what we're trying to do here, with trying to give kids an education that we weren't fortunate enough to have. So that would be my answer. But again, Devora, like, I don't have all the answers. So,
right. From God's perspective, for sure, that it would not be, God is that's the most altruistic thing. God doesn't need to have us at all, but maybe for parents, there is some aspect that it does, help and benefit. I mean, having kids enables you to be the most godlike, essentially, that the sages teach that there's three partners in the creation of man, the mother, father, and Hashem, who generates the whole world and everything, and generates everything like that. Yes.
And like A.B. Chira says, like, yeah, I would imagine that's what Shepping Nachad is all about. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Let's go back to hay, because we mentioned how hay symbolizes childbirth.
Right.
And that's the act, the ultimate form of nature on this planet.
Well, to explain further, that really around every single upside down yud is essentially the symbol tet. We'll hopefully get up there, but the kids, and on Pesach we say, who knows, 9 are the months of pregnancy, and so basically looking at the negative space of the tet, numerically 9, is you see, like, essentially like a baby in the womb. That one of the things that the tet depicts is like the baby in the womb. So here you can have like the head and then the umbilical cord that connects upward, and basically around every upside down yud would be that invisible tet, and the upside down yud is a child is actually born upside down, head first.
And go back to the tet for a minute. This is a very important concept, because this is what I saw, this very funny meme about social distance baptism. I believe Leah Sophie sent it to me, where where a priest was shooting a water gun at a baby.
I'll see you in heaven.
Right?
You saw that?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I'll see you in heaven. I'll see you in heaven.
This idea that a baby is impure because of original sin is completely antithetical to the Torah and also logic, right? When a baby comes into the world, the baby hasn't done anything wrong, which is why Tet is Tov, right? The 9 months of pregnancy, the baby in the womb, done nothing wrong, is the most pure, angelic, innocent being on this planet. And that's also why, and we'll get to Chet, we're kind of jumping around a little bit here, but Tet comes after Chet, which is Chatunah, Chuppah, and God willing, people get married and then they have kids. They get pregnant and then they have kids. So it's the whole story, just like Aleph Bet Gimmel, God, creation, purpose. Aleph through Tuf is this entire story, which we'll delve into a different time because we have to get into the basic lesson first. But that's I'm glad you brought that up because that just shows the Yud is a baby and the Hey is the ultimate act of nature and symbolizes nature in of itself, as we'll get into more right now.
Right, and also that when the Torah says that the mother gives birth, it says vateled, and literally backwards is the symbol Dalet, meaning that the woman becomes a Dalet. Once the Yud leaves in the Hey, you're left with a Dalet. So vateled, she became the symbol Dalet. She became lacking the baby, and sometimes, God forbid, there's like that after birth, they feel like that disconnection, separation, and things like that. Right, and so basically, that's in the Torah. Again, like the symbols are hiding like backwards, spelt out fully. Dalet, Lamed, Tet, Teled is backwards, so that the woman who's pregnant would be seen as like the Hey. When the baby leaves, but Teled, she becomes a Dalet, and the baby comes out. And we'll get more into that. Also, I just wanted to say that anybody who has questions, please ask and type in the chat or however, because we're taking questions. And also, Stephen said an answer to that previous question. He said also the prayers of children are heard first before the prayers of the parents even.
Right. And getting back to what you said about Dalet, Dalet is a door, right? That's literally what that is the door into this world, is
exactly.
The childbirth. So.
That's another good point. Absolutely. Right. And so just, I hope I said it, but on an initial level, Hey and Vav is one of the configurations. It's another name of God. So simply the kids are saying, this is the name of the infinite. All right. So that was built in. And also just to get involved deeper into what it means, Hey and Vav, this is the name of God, Shem. Basically, Shem is comprised of the symbols Shin and Mem, which is like fire and water. That God's Shem, which is translated as name and reputation, God's name and reputation, if you want to know more about God, who is so humble and so concealed, seemingly, on one hand, right, on the other hand, the whole universe reveals God's brilliance, but it's through the Torahs and seen as fire and water, which is also seen as feminine, masculine, respectively. And also the Hey and Vav is alluding to this fact that God's name and reputation is hidden away in the Torahs, or meaning it's there for someone who wants to search. As we say also that to always plug in everything we know about the Aleph Bet, and famously we go on on the last part of the Seder, everything having to do with the Aleph Bet. But we say, who knows 5? I know 5. 5 are the fifths of Torah, and Vav is 6 numerically. Vav is Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. These are the 6 orders of the Mishnah. So together, Hey and Vav literally is the entire Torah is written and spoken, which is the name of God, meaning the reputation of God, that you learn more about God through the Torahs and everything like that as well. We can also touch upon the Hey aspect in the hand. Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
We're going to get to that, back to nature, right? If you want to bring up Hey and Vav again. Getting back to this idea of Hey being nature, we've seen that it depicts the act of childbirth, which is the ultimate form of nature. The 5 senses, right? The 5 senses that we have also, in which we in which we experience nature with our 5 senses, as well as, if we're going to bring in some gematria right now. So we said that the Hey is comprised of a Yud and a Daled, right? Yud and a Daled is Yad, right? Is a hand, right? That's the reason that Hey symbolizes hand, because we have 5 fingers, right? Yud and Dalet is Yad, but also as well, and this is what Leah showed me recently, is that we have 14 phalanges on our hand. An easier way to see it is to look at your, I guess I'll show it to the camera this way. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That we have 14 phalanges in our hand, which is what the Yud and the Dalet. And what nature essentially is God's hand, right? And the way we see that even more
Handiwork, right?
Well, I'm sorry?
The handiwork, yeah, the
Right,
handiwork.
the handiwork of God. And the way we see that even more is that, this we're bringing some gematria, once again, only one of 32 ways, is the same gematria of Elohim is 86, is the same as Ha-Teva, the nature, is also 86. But why the nature? It kind of seems like you're trying to make something up, right? It kind of seems like you're trying to fit something together. But we just established that a Hey is a hand, and nature is in the control of God. God can control nature when God wants to, but he also can let nature take its course. So it's Ha-Teva, because the Teva is under the control of God. So that's another example how Hey symbolizes nature. And it also goes with the story that we're telling about Aleph being God, Bet being creation, Gimmel Dalet being purpose, and then Hey being how. How did this all happen? Cedric says,
So the digits things you were saying?
right.
So if you actually do Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha Yael, if you actually, it spells out the entire digits. So if you notice,
Each word of that.
Oh,
That's
that's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, so just adding to that.
Yeah, hell
Thank
yeah,
you.
Sedge, thank you.
My
And
pleasure.
what's
Steven.
saying over here?
Okay, yeah, the letters in Vehi Shamda, because it's spelled Vav Hey Yud Aleph, represents the reason why Hashem saves us. The 6 Mishnahs, the 5 Torah, 5/5 of Torahs, the 10 Commandments, and 1 is God.
So this is what we're talking about. You guys are like, we're all learning from each other.
Yeah.
You know, like no one's teaching, we're teaching each other, you know, and we're learning from each other, like the Aleph. Like this isn't a teacher-student thing. This is all of us becoming one, you know. It's pretty wild. Want to get back to the Hey?
Right, yeah. And so basically, so Rabbi Zamir Cohen Shlita, yeah, sums up like, Hey numerically is 5, but looking deeper, it's really 14. So we have 5 fingers. Looking deeper, it's really 14 segments. And as we said, like, how do you say hand is literally a Yud and a Dalet, which is Yad. And also flipping Yad, the universal sign for saying stop, is putting up your hand, because what you're saying is die, which is Dalet Yud, which means enough. Also, like in the Haggadah, die dayenu, it's enough for us. So basically everything having to do Yad and die, enough, and right. So things like that. And Vav also is the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, and in the Aleph, the Vav was in the middle, and that's in the Mishnah where we already see the concept of pairs that the sages learned together. And it's in the Torah Shebel Peh that you have the seemingly 2 sages specifically getting together who disagree with one another and challenging, and that way the Torah becomes much more powerful, that it has to stand the test of any question, it has to stand anybody's challenge, and like this you learn massive amounts of Torahs and force each other to learn more. Right, so Hey, simply the name of God, and Hey God, what is God on earth? Or what do we have from the infinite God on earth? And that is the Torahs, you know, given with the Aleph Bet and other lessons, and the Torahs and the Targum and Mishnah, Talmudim, Midrashim, everything.
And also nature as well. Like a lot of people, like a pantheistic view of God is that God is nature and God is all these things. And like, it sounds like a beautiful thing, but what you're actually doing there is you're attributing God's creations not to God.
It's limiting. It's not just that. God didn't just create nature. It's controlling nature and everything down to the atoms, you know, down to the microscopic levels. So I don't know if you want to, you know, these are the first 6 symbols essentially.
No, we didn't do Vav really, like that idea of connection. we can speak about that. The
Right.
idea
Vav,
that
Vav literally is a hook, and Vav is
we're going to
literally
show the physicality of it. Yeah. That a Vav, if you look at it physically, it's a bridge, it's a hook, it connects things.
thought that
The
this thing was
ot
showing
Vav,
me
what Vav is
I thought that there was
Andrew, the Jacob, the Isaac, right? It's and. It means and, which is literally the function of connection, which is Vav. And there's a lot of other otiyot in the Aleph Bet. Like it just shows how much more efficient Lashon HaKodesh is than any other language. Like le is to, right? Or me is from, you know? Or ke is like, you know? What with one ot, you know? It's a pretty wild thing. We can keep going if you guys want. We could take questions, but the basic goal of all of this is that we want more people to have access to this information. And we are planning to look for investors. I already have a couple people in mind from my time in the sports industry. But the most important thing is getting the word out, word of mouth. So if you found this interesting and valuable, please share it with as many people as you feel will feel the same. So we could keep going, but I just want to thank all you guys for being here. It really means a lot.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Andrew, for arranging the whole event as well. And Isaac for helping with the questions and everything. And yeah, just to sum up, those are the first 6 symbols. And essentially, after this, it says that if you do the first 4 symbols, Aleph Bet and Gimmel Dalet, learning together as one face-to-face, the Torah that begins with a bet, and giving to those in need in the most dignified way, then God, Hey Vav, the giver of the 2 Torahs, is going to, you know, the next 6 Aleph Bet are consecutive, that the kids say that Hashem is going to Zanotcha, which is to sustain you, Vechenotcha, and favor you, and Tet umetiv lecha, and do good for you, Yud noten lecha Yerushan, will give for you inheritance, and Kaf is kosher lecha keter, and will tie for you a crown, Lamed is leolam haba. So I just wanted to get that end in there. We'll delve deeper into those concepts as well, either now or a different time, but yeah.
That's what's so crazy. That's what's so crazy is that this stuff that was just 6 otiyot, and we didn't even delve into all of it, of those otiyot. The amazing thing about this is that it's truly, truly infinite. And people, if you like mainstream religion and Judaism, like teaches the idea everything's from the Torah, right? The fact that we have the Torah, but what is the Torah? The Torah is it just a storybook? Is it just a story? Is it just stories? Or on the most micro sense, what it is a collection of the Aleph Bet. Right? It's the otiyot that comprise it. And just as nobody could tell a story that would last for as long as the biblical stories have and have the effect that they have had on this world, just as so the script that those stories are composed of, it's the same thing. And by learning the otiyot, it's a much easier and more simple way of seeing that than trying to break down these cryptic stories in a language that we don't really understand, that has so much more depth to it. That I'm not saying that it has more depth than the Aleph, but just as a much easier way to get that information is by looking at each individual symbol, like the kids did in the time of Rabbi Akiva.
Essentially having the cheat codes to a video game. That's essentially what we're talking about.
It's seeing the code. The Aleph Bet is the code.
It's breaking. Yeah, well, I like to think of it in terms of like actually using the G codes, you know, like I'll get the G code and then then I have a fighter jet in the middle of my mission.
But it's about sharing the code with everybody. Yeah, that's what the most important thing is, that everybody can see this that wants to. And
that's so that would be a mod, a video game mod. That's something basically that anyone
right
program and insert into the game.
All right.
All you have to do is download
Look,
it.
like, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I've, you know, I not to be all self-indulgent and stuff, but like I feel like and I wrote this in the Facebook post, but I feel like I've built up enough equity at this point, like studying content in and of itself, what's interesting, what resonates with people. That was my job in the sports field back when I thought that mattered. You know, I mean, it matters a little bit, and it's cool. Thank God that I had that opportunity. But this is so much more important and more meaningful. It could help so many more people. And I truly believe that if children could learn, not to say that this was perfect, but something like this, that they will resonate with it way more than being forced to sit in a classroom to listen to a teacher out of force, out of authority, than purely wanting to do so. That's just the way I feel, and I hope that this has helped you guys perhaps start to feel the same way.
Right, and we do have a full-length Aleph Bet video on YouTube in case anybody wants to go through the whole thing. I'm more than welcome. Everybody's more than welcome to stay. If anybody wants to go through the whole thing right now, we'll be able to do that. But just to call it for a normal time, that was a good hour, about an hour 10 minutes. So.